The baby would not stop crying. For 3 weeks, the sound echoed through the Crystal Palace. The nurses tried everything. The doctors checked for illness. The royal advisors brought in experts from across the star system. Nothing worked. The baby princess kept crying. Princess Lyra sat by the ornate crib, her face tired and sad. She could not see her baby daughter, for Lyra had been blind since birth. But she could hear the cries, feel the distress coming from her child in waves. And it broke her heart. "Please, little one," she whispered, reaching into the crib to touch her daughter's face. "Tell me what's wrong." The baby, named Nira, only cried louder. Her tiny body glowed with a soft light that pulsed with her cries. All Zindari babies glowed this way, their nearly transparent skin showing the energy flowing through their bodies. But Nira's light had been unsteady since her birth, flashing too bright and then too dim. A soft knock came at the door. King Phalos, Lyra's father, entered the room. The king was tall, like all Zindari, with skin so clear you could see the outline of his bones and the flow of light through his veins. His eyes glowed a soft purple as he looked at his daughter and granddaughter. "No change?" he asked, his voice gentle. Lyra shook her head. "Nothing helps. I failed her, father." The king placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "You have not failed. This is a puzzle we have not yet solved. That's all. The royal doctor says if she keeps crying like this, she might harm her developing sensory systems," Lyra said. "Zindari babies need calm to develop properly." The king nodded, his face serious. "I've sent messages to all our allies across the 7 systems. Perhaps someone else might have an answer." The Zindari were an ancient species. They had traveled the stars for thousands of years, making friends with many other worlds. Their crystal cities were famous across the galaxy. Their special abilities, seeing energy fields, feeling the thoughts of others, hearing sounds no other species could, made them respected and sometimes feared, but now, with all their knowledge and power, they could not help one tiny baby. Days passed. The palace, normally a place of perfect harmony and balance, felt tense. Workers spoke in whispers. The crystal walls, which usually sang with soft music, seemed to vibrate with the baby's cries. Princess Lyra grew more tired each day. Though she could not see, her other senses were very strong. She felt every tiny change in her baby's condition. She heard every catch in Nira's breathing. She sensed the growing worry in everyone around her. "Your Highness," said Ela, the head nurse, entering the royal chambers, "a message has come from the outer moon base." Lyra turned her face toward the nurse, her cloudy eyes showing no expression. "What message?" "The humans stationed there have heard of the baby's condition. One of their medical officers believes he might be able to help." Lyra frowned slightly. The humans were newcomers to this part of space. Their colony on the outer moon was less than 5 years old. They were a young species, still finding their place among the stars. Some Zindari found them too loud, too emotional, too unpredictable. "What do the humans know of Zindari children?" Lyra asked. "This one claims to have worked with many species during the Outer Rim conflicts," Ela explained. "He's a combat medic. His name is Sergeant Greg Phillips." King Phalos, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. "The humans have proven themselves to be resourceful allies, daughter. Their ways are different, but perhaps that is what we need now, something different." Lyra listened to her baby's cries, which seemed to grow more desperate by the hour. She had tried everything the Zindari knew. What did she have to lose? "Very well," she said. "Tell this human he may come," the message went out. The next day, a small shuttle arrived from the outer moon. Palace guards met it at the landing pad and escorted the human visitor through the crystal hallways. In the royal waiting room, the king's advisors gathered, whispering among themselves. "A human in the royal chambers?" "It's never been done," said one old advisor, his skin showing his age through cloudy patches. "The princess is desperate," replied another, "and the king has approved it." "These humans are so young as a species? What can they possibly know that we don't?" asked a third. The oldest advisor, named Vero, shook his head. "Sometimes wisdom comes from unexpected places. Let us wait and see." At the human military base on the outer moon, news of Greg's mission had spread quickly. His commanding officer had called him in for a special briefing. "This is a big deal, Phillips," the commander said. "No human has ever been invited into the royal palace before. You'll be representing all of us." Greg nodded, packing his medical bag carefully. "I understand, sir." "Do you really think you can help their baby?" the commander asked a dog. Greg closed his bag and looked up. "I've seen something similar on Proxima 3 with the Lentari children. Their biology is different from the Zendari, but there are some similarities. I have a few ideas to try." "Well, good luck. This could open doors for human-Zendari relations." The commander hesitated, then added, "Or close them forever if you mess up." "Thanks for the pressure, sir," Greg said with a small smile. Now, as Greg walked through the crystal hallways of the palace, he felt every eye on him. The Zendari guards, the palace workers, the royal advisors, all watched the human with curiosity. And suspicion. Greg looked different from everyone around him. Where the Zendari were tall and slender with nearly transparent skin, he was solid and tan from years of service on sunny worlds. Where they moved with flowing grace, he walked with the confident stride of a soldier. His medical bag, made of worn brown leather, looked out of place among the shining crystal and flowing fabrics, but Greg didn't mind the stares. He focused on why he was here, a baby in distress, a mother at the end of her rope. That was something he understood, something he could help with. No matter what planet he was on. As he approached the royal chambers, he heard the crying. It was different from human babies, higher pitched with an almost musical quality, but the distress in it was universal. Greg straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. The guard opened the door, and Greg stepped into the princess's chambers, ready to try something that no one in this crystal palace had thought to try before. Greg Phillips walked slowly through the long crystal hallway. His boots made soft sounds on the shiny floor. Everything in the palace was made of crystal that caught the light and broke it into tiny rainbows. It was beautiful, but very different. From the simple military base where Greg lived, 2 tall Zendari guards led him toward the royal rooms. The Zendari looked almost like humans, except their skin was nearly see-through. Greg could make out the faint shapes of bones and the glow of blood vessels beneath their skin. They moved with perfect grace, like dancers. Greg felt rough and out of place. His hands were calloused from years of military service. His face had lines from squinting in the sun on too many battlefields. His uniform, though clean and pressed for this special visit, seemed dull next to the flowing garments of the palace residents. "The princess is waiting," said one guard. His voice sounded like wind chimes. They stopped at a large door carved with spiraling patterns. The guard stepped aside and the door slid open without a sound. The baby's crying hit Greg like a physical force. The sound bounced off the crystal walls, making it seem like it came from everywhere at once. In the middle of the round room stood Princess Lyra. She was tall and slender like all Zendari, with long silver hair that floated around her face as if underwater. Her eyes, unlike the glowing purple eyes of other Zendari, were clouded and pale. She had been born without sight, but the Zendari said she could sense more with her other abilities than most could see with their eyes. She turned toward the door when Greg entered, though he had made no sound. "You are the human soldier?" she asked. Greg bowed, then remembered she couldn't see it. "Yes, Your Highness. Sergeant Greg Phillips, combat medic with the Earth Coalition. You believe you can help my daughter?" Hope and doubt mixed in her voice. "I would like to try," Greg said simply. The princess nodded toward a beautiful crib made of twisted crystal vines. Inside, a tiny baby with skin so translucent she seemed made of light itself kicked and screamed. Her face was scrunched up in what looked like pain or fear. "May I?" Greg asked, moving toward the crib. The princess hesitated, then nodded. Several Zendari nurses hovering nearby looked unhappy but said nothing. Greg set his medical bag on the floor and looked carefully at the baby. She appeared healthy, just extremely upset. He had seen this before, both in human babies and in the children of other species he had treated during his service. "How long has she been crying?" he asked. 3 weeks, 2 days and approximately 4 hours, the princess answered immediately. She stops only when she exhausts herself into brief sleep. Greg nodded. And you've checked for illness, pain, allergies? Our best doctors have found nothing wrong. She is perfectly healthy, just happy. The princess's voice broke slightly. On the last word, Greg reached into his bag and pulled out 3 things: a soft brown blanket, a small electronic device, and a tiny bottle of oil. What are those? Asked the princess, somehow sensing the items though she couldn't see them. Things that might help, Greg said. May I hold her? After receiving permission, Greg gently lifted the screaming baby. She was lighter than a human baby would be, and her skin felt cool to the touch. He cradled her carefully, one hand supporting her delicate head. This blanket is from Earth, he explained as he began to wrap the baby in it. It's made of cotton. The texture is different from your fabrics. Sometimes babies just need a change in sensation. His large hands moved with surprising gentleness as he swaddled the baby snugly, tucking the blanket around her in a special way that kept her feeling secure. My mother taught me this technique. She was a nurse before me, Greg continued, keeping his voice calm and steady. Babies sometimes miss the feeling of being held tight like they were in the womb. The baby's cries didn't stop, but they seemed to lose some of their desperation. Greg turned on the small device next to the crib. A rhythmic thumping sound filled the room. What is that sound? The princess asked, tilting her head. A human heartbeat, Greg explained. In the womb, the sound of a mother's heart is constant. Some babies miss that after they're born. The baby's cries softened slightly more. Her tiny face looked less pinched with distress. Greg took the small bottle and put a drop of liquid on his finger. This is chamomile oil, very mild, very safe. We've used it for centuries to calm babies. He gently rubbed the oil on the babies. Temples in small circles. The sweet smell filled the air around them. Human babies respond to smell more than many realize, Greg said softly. Your people rely more on other senses, but sometimes what we need is something completely new and different. Gradually, amazingly, the baby's cries grew quieter. Her tiny body relaxed in the tight swaddle, the combination of the new texture. Against her skin, the steady heartbeat sound and the gentle smell seemed to be working. Her luminescent eyes began to droop. The room fell completely silent as, for the first time in weeks, the baby stopped crying. Everyone watched in amazement, as her eyes closed fully and her breathing became deep and regular. She's asleep, Greg whispered. Princess Lyra reached out, her hand finding Greg's arm with perfect accuracy despite her blindness. Her fingers trembled slightly. How? She asked, her voice barely audible. Our finest doctors, our most advanced. Technology. Sometimes the answer isn't in advanced technology, Greg said. Sometimes it's in the simple things we've carried with us through time. A tear slid down the princess's cheek, catching light as it fell. Thank you, she whispered. Greg carefully placed the sleeping baby back in her crib. The blanket, the heartbeat sound, and the oil should help her stay calm. I can teach your nurses how to swaddle her this way. The princess nodded, her face showing the first relief she had felt in weeks. Please, and would you stay at least for a while? In case she needs you again? Greg looked at the sleeping baby, then at the tired princess. In that moment, he knew his life had just changed in ways he couldn't yet understand. Yes, Your Highness. I'll stay as long as you need me. Outside the windows of the Crystal Palace, the 2 suns of Zendari began to set, casting long shadows, and painting the sky in colors that had no names in human language. A new chapter was beginning for both the human soldier and the blind princess, connected now by the peaceful sleep of a baby who had finally found comfort. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Greg's short visit to the Crystal Palace became a long stay. King Phalos, happy that his granddaughter was finally at peace, asked Greg to remain as a special helper. The human soldier agreed, sending a message to his commanders explaining his new job. The royal family gave Greg a beautiful room with a view of the twin moons. It was too fancy for his liking, with crystal furniture that seemed too delicate to use. but he soon made it feel more like home. He placed his few personal items around the room, a photo of his family back on Earth, his father's old pocket watch, and a small plant he had brought from the human base every morning. Greg helped the royal nurses care for baby Nira. He showed them how to swaddle her in the soft earth blanket. He taught them about the foods human babies liked, suggesting new things for the princess to try. Some worked well, others didn't, but the Zindari were eager to learn. "Your ways are so different," said Isla, the head nurse. "We rely on technology for everything. You rely on dying." Greg shrugged. "Humans have been raising babies for thousands of years without fancy technology. Sometimes the old ways work best." In the afternoons, Greg often spent time with Princess Lyra. At first, their meetings were only about baby Nira. The princess wanted to know everything Greg was doing and why it worked. But soon they began to talk about other things. Lyra was curious about Earth and its people. Though she couldn't see the pictures on Greg's datapad, his descriptions helped her imagine his homeworld. "Tell me about your oceans," she asked one day as they sat in the palace garden. Baby Nira slept peacefully in a small crib between them. "They're huge, covering most of our planet," Greg said. "The water is blue most of the time, but can look green or gray depending on the weather. When the sun sets over the ocean, the water looks like it's on fire." Lyra smiled. "We have no large bodies of water here. Our world is mostly crystal and stone. What does ocean water feel like?" "Wet, of course," Greg laughed. "But also alive. It pushes and pulls at you. It's salty, and if you get it in your mouth, it doesn't taste good. But there's nothing like swimming in the ocean, feeling like you're part of something so much bigger than yourself." Princess Lyra closed her cloudy eyes, trying to imagine it. "I would like to feel that someday." As time passed, Greg learned about Zindari culture too. The princess taught him about their music, which used tones humans couldn't hear. She explained their history, how they had evolved on this crystal world, developing their special senses to navigate and communicate. Greg was surprised to learn that Lyra's blindness was seen as a disability even among the Zindari. "I thought your people would value other senses just as much as sight," he said. Lyra's face grew sad. "Our society values complete sensory awareness. I have stronger hearing and touch than most, but without sight, I am considered less. Some questioned whether I should be allowed to have a child." Greg frowned. "That's not right. You're an amazing mother." "Only because of you," Lyra said softly. Greg shook his head. "I just help with one problem. Everything else, the love, the care, the patience, that's all you." One evening, Greg sat with King Phalos in the royal study. The king wanted to learn about human military structure and how Earth's forces operated in space. "Your species is so young compared to ours," the king said. "Yet you've pushed out into the stars with such determination," Greg nodded. "We've had to be determined. Earth has a history. Lots of wars, disasters. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once." "Perhaps that's why your sergeant knows how to comfort a crying child," the king said thoughtfully. "Your people understand suffering, maybe so," Greg agreed. "We've certainly done our share of it." As Greg became more comfortable in the palace, the Zindari became more comfortable with him. Palace workers who had once avoided the strange, solid-looking human now greeted him warmly. Some even asked him questions about Earth or requested human music, which sounded strange but interesting to their ears. Not everyone was happy about the human's presence, though. Some of the older royal advisors worried about Greg's growing influence. "He spends too much time with the princess," one advisor whispered to another. "It isn't proper. And the king listens to his ideas about trade with Earth," said another. "We know so little about humans. Can they be trusted?" Similar concerns were spreading at the human military base. When Greg's commander visited the palace, he pulled Greg aside for a private talk. "Some folks back at headquarters are worried you're going native, Phillips," the commander said. "They think you might be sharing too much information with the Zindari." Greg stood straight, looking his commander in the eye. "Sir, I'm building trust. The Zindari could be our most important allies in this sector." The commander nodded slowly. Just be careful. Remember where your loyalties lie. As Greg walked back to his room that night, he wondered about loyalties. 6 months ago, his loyalty had been simple, to Earth, to his unit, to his fellow soldiers. Now things felt more complicated. He had grown to care for the Zindari people, especially Princess Lyra and baby Nira, that night. He found the princess in the garden, holding Nira up to feel the gentle evening breeze. She laughed today, Lyra said when she sensed Greg approach. A real laugh for the first time. Greg smiled, watching the baby's tiny hands reach for the floating seed pods that drifted through the garden air. What made her laugh? One of the songs you taught the nurses, the one about the star. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, Greg said, feeling strangely touched. It's very old. Parents on Earth have been singing it to their children for hundreds of years. Lyra turned toward him, her cloudy eyes seeming to look right at him despite her blindness. You've brought something special to us, Greg Phillips. Something we didn't know we were missing. Greg felt something shift inside him, a feeling he couldn't quite name. Standing there in the alien garden, with the crystal towers glowing in the twin moonlight, he realized he had found a kind of home he never expected. I think, he said carefully, we're learning from each other. The alarm bells rang through the crystal palace, their clear tones bouncing off the shiny walls. Greg woke up instantly, years of military training making him alert. He pulled on his clothes and ran into the hallway. Palace workers rushed past him, their normally calm faces filled with worry. Greg grabbed the arm of a guard he knew. What's happening? Greg asked. The children are sick, the guard said, many of them all at once. Princess Lyra sent for you. Her baby is ill too. Greg ran faster than he ever had, taking the crystal stairs 2 at a time. When he reached the royal rooms, he found chaos. Doctors in flowing robes moved quickly around the princess's chambers. In the middle of it all stood Lyra, holding her. Baby girl, little Nira, now 6 months old, looked very different from the healthy baby Greg had seen yesterday. Her skin, normally glowing with soft light, now flashed bright then dim in an uneven pattern. Her tiny face was twisted in pain, and she cried in a strange, broken way. Greg, Lyra said when she sensed him enter. Her voice shook with fear. Something is wrong with Nira, and not just her, children all across the city are showing the same signs. Greg moved closer and gently touched the baby's forehead. She felt warmer than normal for a Zindari child. How many children are affected? Reports are coming in from all over, said King Phalos, who stood by the window looking older than Greg had ever seen him. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, just the young ones, no adults. The lead royal doctor approached, bowing quickly to the king. We have never seen this illness before, Your Majesty. The children's sensory systems are becoming unstable. They cannot control what they feel, see, or hear. Greg watched as Nira's small body shivered. Her crying changed to a high-pitched sound that hurt his ears. Then he remembered something. I've seen something like this before, he said. Not exactly the same, but similar symptoms. It was on Proxima 3 during my last deployment. Everyone turned to look at him. What was it? Lyra asked, hope in her voice. The local children were getting sick after the colony installed new communication towers, Greg explained. Their bodies were reacting badly to certain frequencies the towers gave off. Adults weren't affected, only kids. King Phalos' eyes widened. The Vorton trade agreement? We just installed their communication systems throughout our cities. When did you start using them? Greg asked. 3 days ago, the king said. The timing matches. Greg turned to the royal doctor. Do the Zindari children have more sensitive perception than adults? The doctor nodded. Yes, much more. Their sensory systems are still developing, making them more open to stimuli. That could be it, Greg said. The Vorton technology might be sending out frequencies that are harmless to adults but damaging to children's developing senses. The king called for an emergency meeting. Soon the Crystal Council room was filled with doctors, scientists, and government officials. The Vorton ambassador was brought in too, looking confused and concerned. Our technology has never caused harm before, the Vorton said. His species looked like tall, thin humans with green skin and 4 arms. We have used these communication systems on 12 different worlds. But never with a species like the Zendari, Greg pointed out. Their sensory abilities are unique. The king ordered tests, and soon the scientists confirmed Greg's theory. The Vorten systems gave off a specific frequency that was invisible to adult Zendari, but painful to their children. "We must shut down all the systems immediately," one advisor said. "We cannot," another argued. "Our planet would lose all communication with our colonies and trade partners. Our economy would collapse." The room erupted in argument. Greg watched as Princess Lyra sat quietly, still holding her suffering child. He went to her side. "There must be a way to keep the systems running, but make them safe for the children," he said softly. Lyra looked up. "Do you have an idea?" Greg nodded slowly. "On Proxima 3, we created a dampening field that blocked the harmful frequencies but let the communication systems work. If your scientists and the Vortens work together with what I know... The princess stood up, still holding Nira. "Father," she called out, her voice cutting through the arguments. "Greg has a solution." The room fell silent as Greg explained his idea. The Vorten ambassador nodded eagerly. "Yes, we could add filters to all our systems," he said. "But we don't know exactly which frequencies are harmful to Zendari children." "I do," said the royal doctor. "We just need to build something that can block them." For the next 3 days, Greg barely slept. He worked side by side with Zendari, scientists and Vorten engineers. They combined human practical knowledge, Zendari understanding of their own biology, and Vorten technology. "This reminds me of working in field hospitals during the war," Greg told a Zendari scientist as they tested a prototype. "Making do with what you have, finding solutions with limited resources." "Your species seems good at that," the scientist replied. "We Zendari prefer perfect solutions. Sometimes that makes us slow to act." Finally, they created a small device that could be attached to each Vorten communication unit. It filtered out the harmful frequencies while allowing the system to work normally. They tested it first in the palace. When they turned it on, Nira's skin immediately stopped its irregular flashing. Her crying softened, and soon she was sleeping peacefully in her mother's arms. "It works," Lyra whispered, tears running down her face. Teams were sent out across the city and then the planet, installing the filters on every Vorten system. Reports came back of children recovering everywhere. When the crisis was over, King Phalos called Greg to the throne room. The king sat tall on his crystal throne, with Princess Lyra standing beside him, holding a now healthy Nira. "You have saved our children twice now," the king said. "First my granddaughter, and now thousands more. How can we repay such a debt?" Greg shook his head. "There's no debt, Your Majesty. I just did what needed to be done." "Nevertheless," the king continued, "this event has shown us something important. Our species are stronger together than apart. The solution came from combining human adaptability, Zendari knowledge, and Vorten technology." He stood up from his throne. "I propose we create a permanent partnership between humans and Zendari, a place where our people can learn from each other, share knowledge, and grow together." Greg looked at Lyra, who was smiling. Her cloudy eyes seemed to shine with an inner light. "I think that's a wonderful idea," Greg said. 1 year had passed since Greg first came to the Crystal Palace. The day was special. Flags from Earth and Zendari flew side by side throughout the capital city. People from both worlds filled the streets, looking up at the huge screens showing the ceremony inside the palace. Greg stood in front of a mirror, adjusting his new clothes. He no longer wore his Earth military uniform. Today he wore the flowing robes of a Zendari royal advisor, the first human ever given this honor. The light blue fabric was lighter than it looked, and moved like water when he walked. A knock came. At his door, a young palace worker stood there, smiling. "It's time, sir? They're waiting for you in the Great Hall?" Greg nodded and followed. As they walked through the palace, he thought about how much had changed. What had started with a crying baby had led to something much bigger than he could have imagined. The Great Hall was the largest room in the palace. Today it was filled with important people from many worlds. The Earth Coalition president stood near the front talking with King Thalos. Diplomats, scientists, and military leaders from a dozen species waited for the ceremony to begin. Greg took his place beside Princess Lyra. She looked beautiful in formal robes that sparkled with tiny crystals. In her arms, little Nira, now a year old, looked around with bright, curious eyes. The baby girl had grown so much. She could now sit up, crawl, and was taking her first steps. Nervous? Lyra asked softly, sensing Greg's rapid heartbeat. A little, Greg admitted. I'm a soldier, not a diplomat, Lyra smiled. You're much more than a soldier now. King Thalos raised his hands and the hall fell silent. Today marks a new chapter in the history of our worlds, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. Today we establish the first Human Zendari Research Academy, a place where our species will work together for the benefit of all. The Earth president stepped forward with a document. This agreement creates more than just a school, she said. It begins a true partnership between our worlds. Both leaders signed the document together. The crowd cheered, the sound echoing off the crystal walls. Greg and Princess Lyra stepped forward as official witnesses. Greg signed his name carefully, below the signatures of the two leaders. Then he guided Lyra's hand to the right spot, and she added her royal mark. The Academy will focus first on medicine and technology, King Thalos announced, but will soon expand to include all areas of knowledge. And to lead this new academy, we have appointed Sergeant Greg Phillips as our joint liaison. Greg felt a wave of surprise. He hadn't known about this part. He looked at Lyra, who was smiling. You knew? He whispered. It was my idea, she whispered back. After the ceremony, there was a great celebration in the palace gardens. People from Earth and Zendari mixed together, sharing food, drinks, and stories. Music from both worlds played, creating an interesting mix of sounds. Greg slipped away from the crowd for a moment. He found a quiet spot on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The twin suns were setting, turning the crystal buildings into towers of fire and light. He heard soft footsteps and knew it was Lyra. She had given Nira to a nurse for the evening and joined him at the railing. Can you describe the sunset to me? She asked, a request that had become their daily ritual. Greg smiled, looking out at the view. The larger sun is dipping behind the western mountains, turning them into dark shapes against the sky. The light is orange and purple, and every crystal tower in the city catches the colors like a prism. Lyra nodded, seeing it in her mind through his words. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Did you ever imagine this would happen when you first came here? She asked. Greg laughed softly. Never. I just wanted to help a crying baby. And instead, you changed everything between our species. She said. Below them in a garden, they could hear children playing. Human children from the New Earth Embassy were running and laughing with young Zendari. Among them, little Nira was sitting on a blanket, reaching for the floating seed pods that drifted through the air. Look at her, Greg said. She's going to grow up in a different world than either of us did. Lyra nodded. She know both worlds, both cultures. She be stronger for it. Greg watched as Nira caught a seed pod in her tiny hand. The baby looked at it with wonder, then let it go, laughing as it floated away. She's already showing signs of special abilities, Lyra said. Her sensory perception is stronger than most Zendari children her age. But the doctors also say she has unusual adaptability, a human trait. The best of both worlds, Greg said. Lyra reached for his hand, finding it easily. Her fingers, cool and light, wrapped around his. That's what we're building here, isn't it? The best of both worlds. Yes, Greg agreed, and it all started because of her. They stood together as night fell over the crystal city. Stars appeared. In the sky, some of them the same stars that shone over Earth, though they looked different from this angle. I have something to ask you, Lyra said after a while. The king has proposed a diplomatic visit to Earth. He wants me to go, as his representative. And I want Nira to see your world, to know that part of her heritage. She turned toward him, her cloudy eyes finding his face with perfect accuracy. Will you come with us? Be our guide to Earth? Greg felt something warm spread through his chest. The thought of showing Lyra and Nira his homeworld filled him with joy. I would be honored, he said. Behind them, the celebration continued. People from worlds that had been strangers a year ago now talked and laughed together. Scientists exchanged ideas, diplomats made plans. Children played games from both planets, all because one human soldier had known how to soothe a crying baby. The smallest acts of kindness can change everything, Lyra said, as if reading his thoughts. Greg squeezed her hand gently. And this is just the beginning.